Welcome to 416 Main Street. This is a lovely home in Kellogg, Idaho, and we are going to do a little repair on this old guy. This is technically a Victorian, according to the house inspector that I had going in. Dated it actually to the 1890s, making it a true house from the original Queen Victoria Victorian era. All right, we are looking at a basement wall, and what we're focused on is this little section up here above what used to be the sewer outlet. My project today is to repair this section of the sill, figure out as best we can the extent of the rot and damage, and replace the rotten wood. So to begin, I needed to get access to the work area. So I started by using my grinder with a concrete cutting blade, a diamond blade, to take that raised edge off the foundation wall so I could see what was going on here. So the next step was to evaluate the rot along the board, the sill that you can see here. And this is me trying to poke it with a screwdriver while I'm holding the camera in the other hand. I apologize for a lack of great work. Also zoomed back or came back to show you that this area had been repaired there where the sewer line had gone through and somebody had stacked up some block. This is the upper edge where it was in the way I was cutting out earlier. Just getting access and testing. Fortunately over here, that's good and solid. You can hear the thunk, but over here it softens up. This is the part the inspector was concerned about. It's rotted, and this is a fairly small section. So the next step was for me to pull out my hammer drill and go to work on the wall. I essentially demolished and took apart the wall under the section of rim that was bad. Okay, now we have an interesting situation. You can see that I've cut away a whole bunch of this foundation wall now. And what I've done here, you can see there's a ceramic tile sitting back. I decided to go ahead and cut down to this concrete block. It looks like this block, it might be patio block that they've stacked up here in the wall to fill it and make it solid, but it gives me a flat surface because I'm going to want to have something to support this rim joist along the way. Right now it's all along this section where we're working. It really wasn't supported at all. And so it is spanning this area. I'm going to need to at least try to give it a little bit of support here. There's a patio outside. That's what we're looking at under here, is actually the underside of a concrete patio. This is what it looks like from the outside. This is the patio slab that we're working underneath, and you can see it's covered by a shed roof, so it's protected from the rain certainly and the weather. The specific area where I'm working is right underneath that S-shaped piece of downspout laying on the patio that you see here. So the next step was to cut away the rotted section of this rim joist, and I'm doing that here. But let me explain something. What I expected to find when I opened things up was that a sill plate would be laying on top of the foundation wall. What I found was that the house had been built with the rim joist simply resting on the foundation wall. So instead of a 2x4 laying flat on top of that wall, I discovered the rim was a couple of 2x8s. I'm assuming they're 2x8s. I had no way of reaching the top of them, sistered up. So there was no way to remove them entirely. So what I'm doing here is actually carefully cutting out with a fine saw a section of those rims, so you'll be able to see real quickly what I do with that. So here's the finished cut. I took out substantially all of the rotted wood, the whole area that ran along the bottom edge of these rim joists. In fact, virtually all of the rot was in the joist that was closest to me here as I'm working. The outside piece turned out to be in much better shape for whatever reason. The piece I've cut is 1.5 inches deep, in part because that's what is reachable here, and of course that's the dimension of a standard 2x piece of material, right? Now, zooming in, I'll point out a couple of things. You can see how I've cut into good wood all along here. The goal in these repairs is, of course, to get rid of all the rotted wood. There's a little bit of rot left along on the near rim on the left here, but I'll deal with that in a moment. And you can also see that there's a new rim joist, actually sistered rim joists, that were installed up against the old ones about 10 years ago during a substantial remodel when the entire floor in this section of the house was replaced. So this new wood you can see up nearest to you is all new framing for this entire floor. And here's a close-up of the underside of the cut, and you can see how bright and good most of that wood is. Here's the little bit of rotted section we'll deal with, as I said, in just a moment. You can see here that the ends of the exposed rim joists there that are showing are in really good shape as well. So we've gotten past the rotted section with our cuts. And that black area you see behind them, that's actually a piece of tar paper behind a piece of plywood that's on the exterior of the building. So that tar paper remains in place. That's the beauty of cutting with a fine saw. That tar paper is still intact and going to give me a little bit of protection. We're going to use some wood preservative on the existing rim joist down there, as well as the ends of any cut pieces of lumber that I put in there. I've got the wood preservative in a spray bottle, and here's my exposed existing rim joist parts that I cut. So on the cut edges, I'm going to spray it. And I'm going to pay some special attention up here to this area that had a little bit of rot that still I couldn't cut out. I just can't get to it. So we'll just soak this really well all around with this material. And this wood preservative will soak in and protect that wood for many years to come. Will help arrest the existing rot. I don't think it's going anywhere now because it's so dry down here. But there we go. So what we've done here now is cut a chunk of 2x4, and this is a treated piece that now fits into the section that we cut out. Obviously we cut it out with the intention of putting in dimension-sized lumber. And I've preset some screws here. My next step here, you can see I've created a little assembly here with a jack, a little bottle jack underneath it. This is, you know, pretty light-duty jack to jack up a whole house. But really all I'm trying to do is lift and get the weight off of this outside plate. I have cut a little stud here as a test, and I've cut this about 1/8 of an inch long for fitting between the block here and the plate that I've installed. So it doesn't fit at all right now, but my intention is to make it fit crying tight by actually lifting up this little section of the house just a tiny fraction so that I can get that in there. Actually, my test was successful. However, it's important to note a couple of things. See how that little plate that I put at the bottom where the bottle jack pushes up is actually splitting out and cracking. All the pressure on that it's breaking, even though I lined everything up very well and made sure that this stud, by the way, that I'm jacking on is absolutely vertical. And look at how much bow I've got put into my this little 2x4 that I put underneath these joists. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure going up, lifting, and it was enough that I could pound my temporary short stud in there. So I knocked together a little miniature stud wall, sized it carefully so that it would fit very tightly in the space I have for it, and let's see how I managed. Okay, here's the new little framed wall that's sitting on top of the blocks there in the foundation, supporting my rim repair. And I did, as you saw, jack up the house as best I could. This is oversized by 1/8 of an inch. So I took some pressure off with the jack and post arrangement, hammered that thing in there so it's crying tight, and then took the post off, of course, and let it down, and that is not coming out of there anytime soon. I'm starting to mortar up around my framed wall. I put a little piece of plywood in, which I also covered with copper sulfate, so it won't rot out. And then I'm backfilling. I use that as a wall so I can backfill behind it. I'm carefully spooning the gravel that came out of here. Yeah, so I'm building up over here particularly with a stack of rocks and mortar, and then pulling up handfuls of rock, gravel, and compacting it back in here. Now here's my last step. See that mortar that I've put in there? What I've found is that I've got it full, and I can pack this mortar back in there so that I'd have no voids. No voids, that's the name of my new band. And here is the final product. This wall is supporting the outside rim in a nice fashion. I have mortared and stacked material, rocks, to create a nice wall, and filled in behind it, packed it with mortar all the way back up and in, cramming it tight up against the underside of that slab out there. Should be a permanent repair. Hey, thanks for sticking with me through the end of this video. Hopefully now we've helped this house become a wonderful home for folks for many more years to come. Here's a quick note for the new homeowners, and that is that the hose bib back here on this wall under the porch may have been a contributor, or certainly an earlier version of this hose bib might have contributed to the problem that we're addressing here with this repair. I discovered this while I was mixing mortar, and it turned out that some water that had splashed on the cement here on the slab found its way underneath the bottom trim on the siding, and it showed up as some dripping that I could see while I was back in the basement. A few drips coming off that plywood sheathing with the tar paper I pointed out earlier. The solution, in addition to just keeping an eye on it and making sure there's a good hose on that hose bib, is to seal the gap that I'm pointing out here between the trim piece and the cement slab with some good quality caulk or some hydrostatic cement for the few feet underneath the hose bib. That should take care of this entirely. The slab slopes away from the house quite positively, and I wouldn't anticipate any trouble at all going forward.